Hi, I'm Emma Everett, Team Leader for our Buyers Agents here at Momentum Wealth, and I'm joined by Sebastien, our Residential Asset Management Advisor, to talk about the subject of rental yields. Now, the Perth rental market has experienced some significant improvements in the last 12 to 18 months. We've seen a sharp drop to the rental vacancy rate, less stock on the market, and this has started to translate to increased tenant competition and increased levels of inquiry. Now, for some properties, this means rent increases, but these rent increases aren't being experienced across the board. So, Sebastien, for an owner whose property is coming up for rent, what factors should they consider before deciding on their asking price?
One of the things that I always speak to owners about is really having understanding about what your where your property is located. If your property is located in one of the northern family-orientated suburbs, you're going to have a different demographic and potentially and level of demand and stock even, so your competition, than if you had a property in a city CBD.
Sure.
Location is really important. So if we sort of isolate that and look at a particular suburb profile, if it happens to be like a family-orientated neighbourhood, you look at the demographic. It's going to be mums and dads and their kids and their dogs perhaps. And so we want to look at how does your property compare if yours is located in a busy intersection or with a major arterial route running behind it. It's causing a lot of noise. And how's that going to compare to others that are similar size and condition of home, family size, that you're competing against, who may be positioned in a quiet cul-de-sac or opposite a park or walking distance from a school, and how's that going to position your property price-wise to still appeal to the right type of tenant. So really understanding and being realistic about.
Absolutely, and of course tenants are not looking at any property in isolation. They're comparing properties across a range of factors, location and property condition and the features and those kinds of aspects of a property.
Yes.
Now, something that we've noticed recently, some of our owners who've had a long-term tenant might bring their property to the market today and realise they've actually been receiving above market rent for a few years. Perhaps they had a tenant paying good rent who wanted to stay, and then when the market rent decreased, they didn't have to discount because they already had a tenant, which is fantastic until that tenant moves out and it's time to reprice the property.
Yep.
So for owners who have to keep their rent the same or perhaps even offer a slight discount to re-rent their property today, what can we put in place to increase their rent in 6, 12, 18 months' time?
There are different things that they can try to do. One of the things that we have been doing at Momentum Wealth this year, a simple thing like including a 3% rent increase clause that gets activated after the first 6 months. And that can be for when you have a vacant property and you just discuss that with people that are applying for your property, that this is what's going to occur after 6 months. Your rent's going to increase by 3%, but for the first 6 months you'll have the same rent that you're applying for now. And even if you happen to be just renewing your existing lease for another 12 months, you can certainly have that sort of open dialogue, that discussion with your tenants.
Now, I understand that in most cases tenants are happily signing those clauses. It's a really clear sign that they see the rental market moving, and they would expect to be paying 3% more or higher if they had to move in 6 or 12 months' time. So that's really encouraging to see.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you've touched on this a little bit already, but for someone who wants to improve the position of their rental property in the market, and they perhaps were prepared to consider some improvements and repairs to do this, how can they decide how much to spend and what to spend their money on?
Yeah, great question. There are a lot of ways that you can sort of spend above the odds and not necessarily see that return on your investment. But it's really important to understand your target market. Really important to know who's out there and what they are looking for. So in line with when you are doing your diligence, your comparative market analysis, understanding what are the features that other properties are offering, you want to then reflect back on your own property and see what else you could do. If you've got a property that's for instance, really close to a university perhaps, and your target market is likely to be that sort of early 20s, maybe students or young professionals that don't have time to clean up dishes, and you might have bought a property that's off the plan or built a property and has no dishwasher. I'd recommend to fit a dishwasher in there if you're going to really connect with the real-time needs, the practical nature of what tenants experience when they move into a new home. It's really about understanding the needs of who your target market is and trying to prepare your home to tick as many boxes as possible without going too far over the top.
And of course, tenant demand and the rental marketing experience doesn't just vary from location to location, but also within each time of year.
Yes.
So as we have this conversation, it's a windy, cold day out there in Perth today. So extra rain, early sunsets, it does change the leasing experience. So what advice would you give a property owner who has their property vacant at this time of year?
Yeah. So in winter, traditionally, it's generally been the case where inquiries can drop or people cancel a little bit more frequent because it's sometimes a bit too cold to get up and go look for at another property. So it's really important for owners to have a realistic expectation perhaps then of the rent that they should expect and perhaps even the time it takes to lease the property.
Sure.
And also simple things as well, like if it is going to be, if it's raining and your gardens are growing at a faster than usual rate, to spend a bit more time just on the presentation and the curb appeal.
And now I understand you also have some strategies around preventing the property from being vacant next winter. So
Yes.
Can you share with us a little bit about how you approach that?
Yeah, so I've always, of the belief that you don't necessarily have to stick to a 6 or 12 month lease when you are renting out your property. And if your property is vacant during this winter time, you're certainly welcome to have discussions with your property manager or your property manager with your tenant about offering a 14-month lease or a 15-month lease or an 18-month lease, whatever the case might be, that gets you next time around out of having to have vacant property in winter.
Absolutely.
So just having that sort of dialogue with your tenants, and I'm sure a lot of tenants as well probably hate looking at homes during this time as much as owners hate having their property vacant.
And of course, after all that work's been done and the property's on the market, we still need to remember that tenants are comparing properties and possibly even applying for more than one property at a time.
Yes.
And so following them up really quickly becomes really important, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Put in the hard yards, a bit of elbow grease, just pick up the phone and call those tenants that have come to visit your home. They've taken time out, get some feedback. You might be surprised. They might be about to tell you that they're about to apply for your property. But it's also a good way to gather some of the feedback, some of the intel on a grassroots level, what they thought about your property, how it compared with others that they might have visited, because they might have visited, 3 or 4 or however many. And maybe use some of that feedback to potentially implement changes to your own property, so that way you sort of ticking the boxes of what people are finding really important now.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Sebastien. There's certainly more to leasing a property than meets the eye.
Yeah, thank you.
And lots of work and strategy behind the scenes to make things look smooth from the outside. So if you're listening to this and you're wondering how these changes in the rental market and how some of these strategies might impact the leasing of your property, we'd love to hear from you. You can give us a call or you can visit us online at momentumwealth.com.au.